I thought I'd start with a short reading from Sophias Saints, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about, who encouraged me to write and who inspired me to write. Sophias Saints takes place in Corpus Christi, and a lot of people who have read it, who are from Corpus Christi, have told me that they feel like the city is a character in the book, and I'm really glad they say that because I did put a lot of the setting in there. And I'm just going to read from the very beginning. It's a first-person narrative, and the main character's name is Sophia. I draw with fire. After all, isn't it in fire and through fire, the fire of that strange bush that will not be consumed, that God speaks his one absolute truth, I am who I am. My fire is not so mystical. It's no more than the hot iron tip of a pyroelectric pen. I draw my own interpretations of the saints. St. Anne, St. Dominic, St. Jude. Instead of in the blazes of hell, St. Lucifer stands in the oil refinery flames that stink up the edges of Corpus Christi. Instead of a child on his back, St. Christopher carries the harbor bridge and the intercoastal highway. Here in the musty building of the Trade Center flea market, my wood burnings hang on the walls of my best friend's booth for sale. Sophia, you need to diversify, Susie says, her wispy mouth fattened by thick red lipstick. You need logos or a gimmick, second one at half price, or free gift wrapping like those people over there. She points to bins of Tupperware and Slim Jims across the aisle, her fingernail sculptured and drippingly red. Susie is always thinking about maximizing profits. This whole flea market booth is her idea. She sells baptism gowns, First Communion veils, unity candles. She runs a kitchen sink to fill plastic vials while making the sign of the cross over her own version of holy water. And she can guiltlessly play the priest because no one cares about authenticity at the Trade Center flea market. People here believe in signs, not the prophetic signs of God, but advertisements. The booth across the aisle sells generic purses, but for an extra 10, the salesman adds a Dooney and Burke tag. Looks like the real thing, the customers say, so pleased. What do you think, Susie says? I'm just trying to get you more money. I only draw saints. It's what I see in the wood. Susie pulls at her blouse to let some air in. We have lived in Texas all our lives and should know the weather by now. Corpus Christi's heat thickens the air with humidity that clings to our hair and collects in the creases of our necks. We have air conditioners and fans in the flea market, but their rotating and venting only stir the dampness. Already midday and I smell the sweat, the crowd's slight oniony odor mixed with cheap perfume, and the dried up pee from a dog chained to a nearby table leg. It stinks, that strange syrup of people clinging to each other. I'll never look good in this heat, Susie says. Who cares? I do. I've got a date with Frank after this. You mean Mr. Silvertooth himself, I tease? I told you he got it in the Army. That's how they fixed teeth back then. Back then? How old is he? None of your business. At least I'm not robbing the cradle, she says, meaning my boyfriend, Julian, lanky Julian, only 16 years old, and me, already 30. I'll stop there. I have nephews and nieces, and I've got some nephews and nieces that live in Chicago, and I've got some that live in Houston. And my Chicago nephews and nieces know how to ice skate, and they can tell you the numbers and the names of players on the Cubs, and that play with the Bulls. They go to Northwestern football games. And my Houston nephews, they know how to skateboard, and they're always, showing off the difference between a kickflip, a grind, and an ollie, all these things. And they love to do this. And I say this because we learn what we're exposed to. And children are going to pick up what they're exposed to. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I was exposed to when I was a child and how did that translate into becoming a writer. Because my house didn't have a lot of books, and my parents are not avid readers, and they don't enjoy writing. But they did have activities that I found very inspiring. My dad, he liked to fish. he had this schedule where he worked 10-hour days so he could be off on Fridays so he could go fishing. And a lot of times I would go with him on Saturdays. Of course, he liked to see the sun come up, so he'd wake me up at this like really early hour on the only day I got to sleep late, which I didn't like at all. I complained about it. But I had to admit that as we drove out to the water, watching the sun come over the horizon is still one of the most beautiful memories that I have. My dad is left-handed, so I learned how to fish with the left-handed with a left-handed reel. And I remember casting out, after putting the bait on, and there in the ocean, I had the hardest time determining what was the difference between when the current was tugging at the line and when the fish was nibbling at the line. You had to really pay attention to notice that difference. And then sometimes I would feel a fish bite the hook, and I'd yank the reel back. And of course I would lose the fish, and my dad would say, "Can't do that. You have to tease it. You have to seduce it. You have to wiggle the line a little bit and let the fish think the shrimp is still alive and let it get a big old bite on it, And then sometimes a fish would clomp down on that hook, and I'd see the rod arc over, and I'd start reeling it in, and I remember I'd hold the rod against my stomach, and sometimes I'd get a bruise, and I just knew this was a big fish because of how strong it was. And I'd reel it in, and finally the fish would come out of the water, and it'd be this big, And then sometimes you have to be patient when you go fishing, and I'd cast out, wait. I'd start to daydream. I'd think about the boys I liked. I'd replay scenes from school or from a movie I saw, and then I'd reel the line in, and the shrimp would be gone. And I'd be like, "Dude, look at that, Dad. This fish just ate the shrimp off the hook, and I didn't even feel it." And my dad would say, "You have to pay attention." And, those lessons that I learned from fishing, that you have to pay attention, is an important lesson for a writer. And the idea that sometimes you're going to put a lot of effort and a lot of exertion into what you're doing, and you might not get a whole lot out of it. A little fish that you have to throw back because it doesn't meet the size requirement. That happens with a lot of writing too. You put a lot of effort, you do a lot of drafting, and you end up throwing out more than half of what you originally wrote to get at the good parts. And I thank my dad for teaching me that, because those lessons stay with me all the time. The patience too that fishing requires is another important lesson. My mother, she liked to sew, and she made the most beautiful outfits. I was always the envy at my elementary school because I had unique clothes that my mother made me. And I remember being in the second grade and saying, "I want to learn how to sew." And so she started teaching me. And she talked about patterns, how you use patterns. And she said, these are patterns, these are like suggestions. You can change them. You can, add a little here, take a little there, and make them your own. And then we would go to the store to buy fabric, which was my favorite thing because it was such a tactile experience. And my mother taught me about the different textures of fabrics. And to this day, I love going to those stores and just touching the different fabrics. How do they fall? Are they stiff? Are they soft? And what is the pattern? Is it a large pattern, a big pattern? The colors, is this going to work good with this pattern? We would go to the Valley every spring break because they had a store there called Dos Rios. Anybody from the Valley been to Dos Rios? I love that store. I hope it's still there. I haven't been there in a long time. I love that store. We would go there, and they had beautiful, beautiful fabrics for fancy dresses. And the buttons, choosing the buttons. And what my mother would do is she could imagine and she could predict in the future what this outfit was going to look like. Because all she had at the beginning was just, an idea. And then the process of putting the outfit together, cutting out the pattern pieces, adjusting them so they fit you right, and then the sewing that went into it, and all the patience that took. And my mother had 3 things she would tell me that applied to sewing, but they apply to everything else too. And one of them was, if you're going to start something, finish it. If you're going to do something, do it right. And if you make a mistake, fix it. And that's what she would say about sewing, but she would say it so often that those three little lessons stayed in my head. So from my mother, I learned a lot about writing too. Because what's writing if it's not understanding and imagining a future and predicting what's going to happen in a story as you write, and then making it real as you go through the process of writing. And I also learned that sometimes, just like with the fishing, you make a mistake and you have to go back and you have to revise. I also learned that there are patterns. There are patterns of stories. I remember when I was in high school, I read somewhere that there are like so many plot lines, to like 33. I mean, somebody enumerated the possible plot lines. And I remember telling my high school teacher, how can I write if all the stories have been told already? And she says, well, they haven't been told in your voice. And that always stayed with me. So the patterns are there. They've been there since the beginning of human society. But when you write, you rely on them, but you also make them your own. And I learned that from my mother. And the point I want to make here is that children learn what they're exposed to. And they take what they learn, they transfer it to other things in their lives. And I hope a lot of you are freshmen here, you're just getting started with your educations, and I hope that you take that with you. I want to read a little bit from another story I wrote. As you can tell, I had a really magical, wonderful childhood. So naturally, I was somebody who didn't want to grow up. I liked being a kid, and I think that's one of the reasons why writing for young people appeals to me, because I get to become a young person again. Keats, he had this saying, what was it called, negative capability idea, where when you're a writer, you lose yourself when you become something else. And I think that's very true, and I like returning to my childhood self. So I wrote this story about a girl who, she doesn't want a quinceañera. She doesn't want to grow up. And this story is called Quinceañera Nunca. Never 15. The minute I was born, Mom said, I can't wait till Sonia's 15 so we can make her a quinceañera, the fanciest quinceañera in the world. She'd talk about where we'd have the dance, what band would play, but I like skateboarding, not waltzing. She'd sketch designs of ballroom dresses and crowns when all I ever wore was T-shirts, Converse, and jeans. She'd draw fancy cakes. I lost my place. She'd draw fancy cakes, the kind with spiral staircases between the layers and thicker arrangements of sugary flowers. What a waste of money. She'd ask me for a list of possible damas and escorts, but I couldn't think of 14 kids I liked. Mom's plan seemed centuries away, so when I turned 11, I thought I had 4 years before officially becoming a woman. But growing up was a lot more complicated than enduring the fancy quinceañera. I'd have to endure the monthly wound, too. That was Mom's word for the period. I don't get it, I said. Why do I have to suffer every month? Because, mija, remember, Eve ate the apple. But why do I have to pay for something? Why do I have to pay for something Eve did thousands of years ago? And why is God holding a grudge when he's always telling us to forgive and forget and turn the other cheek and all that? Because that's just the way it is. She handed me a pink booklet called The Birds and the Bees for Girls. Read this, she told me. It has everything you need to know. I glanced through it, looked at the sketches of ovaries and fallopian tubes. My monthly wound, it turned out, had more in common with sex and babies than apples and Eve. I was fascinated by the science behind it all and by the sketch of the female reproductive system, which looked more like a ram skull than a baby-making machine. But then I got to the coupons for Kotex, Secret, and Claricel. Was this what growing up was really about? Bleeding, stinking, and tackling zits? So what kind of stuff is going to happen to Henry, I asked. Henry was my brother, 2 years younger. What do you mean, Mom said. He's going to grow up too, isn't he? Where's the birds and the bees for boys? I don't think there is one. Why not? Mom pulled at her shirt, which meant she was getting nervous. The way I see it, I said, Eve wasn't alone.
Maybe she took a bite out of the apple, but so did Adam. She didn't stuff it in his face. She didn't force him to eat it. So guys need a wound too, don't they? Mom pulled at her shirt some more. Don't I have a right to know what happens to guys, I asked. Sure you do, mija. She took a deep breath. Boys change too. How? Well, they grow hair on the face and chest, and their voices get deeper. And they get taller and more muscular. And they have dreams sometimes. Dreams? Yes, disturbing dreams. Like nightmares? I don't know, Sonia. I'm a woman. It's not like I have the dreams. Does Dad? At this, my mother bunched the whole hem in her hand. So what else happens, I wanted to know. That's all, she said. That's all? Yes. You're telling me I have to get a monthly wound for the rest of my life, and all guys get is more hair, a deeper voice, muscles, and dreams? How is that fair? It's not, mija. But then, life's not fair, not even for boys. Just think about it. No one celebrates a boy growing up, but girls get to have quinceañeras. I love that story. It's so much fun. And it's been a great experience because I've had a chance to read it with my mother in the audience. And I always dedicate it to her, you know, because I really was like Sonia. I was terrified of the whole growing up thing, you know. I didn't want it. And, that kind of brings me to another question that people frequently ask. Are you your character? Is that you? And who in your life is this person in your book? And I guess a lot of people feel like books are autobiographical. And I guess to a certain extent they are. But the truth is that I like making people up. Of course, the adage, write what you know, it's true. Write what you know. And but feel free to invent things too. Most of my characters are composites of people I've met, experienced, imagined, read about. And then after a while, and maybe some of you have heard this, when you're writing a story, your character starts to take on a life of his or her own. And that's when being a writer is really fun, when you get to that part. And you don't really know what's going to happen next in the story. And you get to discover it just as your character does. So for the past few years, I've been hearing the young adult's voice, and I wanted to share just a little bit because I wanted to talk about crossing genres. The elements of storytelling are the same. They don't really change. Just a few things change, at least I think, and that is you have to keep in mind that that young people, that you're trying to write for young people, and so getting that authentic young voice, I think for me was the greatest challenge when I started writing for them. Fortunately, I taught middle school for many years, so I had the voices in my head, and I had a lot of experience talking to young people. And I always feel like sometimes people ask, what do you prefer more? Do you prefer writing for adults, or do you prefer writing for young adults? And I can't really answer that question because I like writing, period. But I will say that they come from different parts of me. And I think the adult writing comes from a part of me that's maybe a little more skeptical about the world. One of the challenges I had as I was going through life was, I had this great magical childhood. And my mother used to tell me, about the real world. She used to always say the real world in different contexts. And I used to think, well, what world is this one? The fake one? I didn't understand. Until I moved out on my own, and I realized, yeah, I was in the fake world. As wow. And I kind of went to this dark period where I was very skeptical and cynical. But at the same time, I realized that I didn't have to be that way. I wanted to know how to get what I called the magic of my childhood days back. And that, for me, was one of the questions that I was struggling with when I was writing Sophias Saints. And it's one of the questions that Sophia is kind of dealing with. She's this 30-year-old woman who's still kind of living as a teen, emotionally, she's a teenager. And so how does she grow up, but without losing those wonderful things that keep us young? And I think through her, I learned that the way to keep the magic in your life lies in the people that you love. And it lies in the art that you create. And it doesn't have to be writing novels. Your art might be executing a beautiful free throw, or baking chocolate chip cookies, or sewing dresses like my mother did, or fishing like my father did. The point is, you need to find your passion. And I think once you find your passion, that's where the beauty, and that's where the joy, and that's where the magic of life is. And you got to go one step further. You've got to share your passion. You've got to share your passion. Give that chocolate chip cookie to somebody, and let them taste what you can do, and let them hear what you can do. So I want to read another excerpt so I can share a little bit more of my passion with you. And this is from my book, Confetti Girl. And you can see I'm wearing the socks. And these are the actual socks that are on the cover. But these are not my legs. They had somebody, I don't know who, model these pictures. And they sent me some sample covers. And I really liked the socks. And I'm glad they went with that cover. And then later in the mail, they sent me the socks. So I like to wear them when I do readings. And if you have a pair of Wacky Socks, you can email a JPEG to me, and I will put it on my Wacky Sock gallery on my website. So I got about, I think I got at least 100 socks on there already. People have been sending me. Kids from around the country have been sending me their Wacky Sock pics. Since I know we have some athletes in here, I'm going to read a little section about a volleyball game. My main character's name is Lena, and her best friend's name is Vanessa. Baker is our middle school, a brick building in the neighborhood with street names like Casa Grande, Casa Linda, Casa de Palmas, and our street Casa de Oro, which means House of Gold. I felt nervous about starting middle school, but then I realized I could sign up for volleyball. I have Lucky Socks for game days, white athletic socks with an applique of our mascot, a Bronco. Unfortunately, it takes more than Lucky Socks to win a game. Coach Luna doesn't know much about volleyball, since she's really a math teacher. The only reason she works with us is because all the real coaches help the football team. Okay, girls, she says in the locker room. I know Hamlin is first in district, but don't let that intimidate you. Losing a game doesn't make you a loser for life. You still have high school and college and careers ahead of you. That's the game that really matters, the game of life. So even if you lose every inning, you mean match, someone says. Yes, match. Even if you lose every match, you still be winners in my book. She gives a thumbs up and hurries us out of the locker room. We've got time before the game, so we run laps around the gym, stretch, practice our serves, then do a setup and spike drill. I see my dad walk in during our warm-up. He settles on the bleachers and opens a book. Luis is here too. He comes to every game to work the popcorn machine for student council. Maybe he doesn't belong on the cover of a magazine like J14, but I think he's cute. Picture small black frame glasses on a curly-haired hero from my dad's Greek mythology book. That's Luis. Soon, the Hamlin girls arrive. They look like racehorses, tall and sleek. Their arms are meaty, not skin and bones like mine. And they don't breathe, but snort. They're more muscular than boys in football pads. The floor suddenly quakes as the Hamlin coach walks in. There's only one way to describe her, the human version of a monster truck. I heard their coach was in the '96 Olympics, Vanessa says. No way, I tell her. And we got stuck with a math teacher? The Hamlin coach lines up her team and guides the girls through Thai bow kickboxing moves. They're punching and kicking the air and making us wonder if there's a combat version of volleyball we didn't know about. Coach Luna decides to copy the pro. She claps her hands and makes us line up. Okay, girls, time to get serious. We do jumping jacks, toe touches, and windmills. It's embarrassing. Finally, the referee blows a whistle. 3 minutes till game time. We huddle, and Coach Luna names the starters and says, remember the true game. We put our hands in the center. 1, 2, 3, Baker Broncos. Meanwhile, the Hamlin girls huddle too. Their monster truck coach taps the clipboard and angrily points at them. Then they put their hands in the center. We're going to fry them, the coach says. Yeah, roast them. Yeah, devour them. Yeah. And together they chant, Hamlin, Hamlin, rhymes with champion. Yeah. If volleyball were a mind game, they'd have us beat. It doesn't take much to make us feel like wimpy appetizers before a feast. We take our places, mine by the net, since I'm the tallest girl. We crouch slightly. We brush off our insecurities. We're ready, we tell ourselves. We forget everything Coach Luna told us about jobs and schools and the true game. We don't care if we're in middle school. We want to win. Volleyball does matter. Hamlin's server dribbles a few times, looks for our weak spot, then executes a beautiful overhand that lands with a boom. All we do is stand like statues because the serve's so fast and powerful. I'm surprised there isn't a crater where he hit the court. We're in big trouble. Only 2 of us can serve overhand, and half the time those serves clip the net. For Hamlin's second serve, we move toward the ball, all of us colliding in the middle like marbles. Next time, call it, one of my teammates says. The third serve drills toward us again. Mine, Vanessa calls. She digs deep, hurls herself to the floor, and bumps the ball inches before it hits the ground. It shoots straight up. Another girl sets it for me, and bam, spike right past the Hamlin girls. A perfect play. The ball's ours. Goldie's our first server. She's not very athletic, but her serves are brutal. In fact, we call her our secret weapon. She shakes the bangs from her eyes and executes a gentle underhand serve that floats straight up, nearly hitting the roof. We can't tell whether the ball will land on our side or theirs. The Hamlin girls can't tell either. They squint at the bright lamps overhead, and the ball falls inches from the net, their side. They scramble, but too late. The point's ours. Like I said, a secret weapon. Goldie's serve is usually good for a few points. But like they say, we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket because the Hamlin girls are quick studies. We fool them only once. The ball is theirs again. For every point we make, they make 3 or 4. It's a quick game. We take a 5-minute break and switch sides for game 2. I no longer have my back to Luis and my dad, but I don't have time to search them out because it's our serve and I'm up. I can serve overhand when I'm lucky. You can do it, Vanessa says, full of hope. Yes, I can, I tell myself. Querer es poder. Querer es poder. These are the words my dad has drilled into me. Basically, they mean if I think good thoughts, good things will happen. Maybe I can't bore a crater like the Hamlin girls, but I can make a pothole. So I throw the ball, ready to drill it down, and drill it I do, right under the net. I feel horrible when my teammates slump. Soon the Hamlin girls are 5 points ahead. We're not appetizers after all. We're grease stains. That's how bad we're doing. When I glance at my dad for encouragement, I can't believe my eyes. He's reading. During the worst game of my life. How could he? If Mom were here, well, she'd watch the game. And she'd make Dad watch the game too. I want to yell at him. I don't care who hears. But then I notice Luis, who is paying attention to me. Right in the middle of my volleyball game, I get paralyzed. I can't turn away from Luis because he's smiling as if proud. I don't think he understands volleyball. Maybe he thinks it's like miniature golf where the lowest score wins. Or maybe he likes me. I smile back at him and wave. Then, slap! The volleyball hits my face with enough power to knock me down. The whole gymnasium laughs. I can't take it. I run off the court to hide in the locker room. A few minutes later, my teammates walk in. We lost, they say. Hamlin creamed us. So they're not very good at volleyball. Thank you. Anybody want to ask some questions? Oh, please. Yes.
Sophia is that her art is discerning or ferreting out the shapes of saints in wood and so obviously there is an affinity for musician, yet when you allude to the struggle that she was having in her life, also picked up in the book that she was wavering at the end of things when what her life was going, didn't work out, a lot of struggles. She is choosing another lady from the
Chimuelita.
restaurant to go to San Antonio and see the there's a lot of disillusion. Part of her struggle.
Yes, so, Sophia, all these people around her, they see signs and everything. And she doubts that, And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the book, I have a character named Chimuelita. Chimuela is someone who doesn't have any teeth. And Chimuelita, she doesn't have any teeth because she's always making promesas. And a promesa is kind of like I call it like a bargain with God. And you pray and you say, if you help me with this, I'll do this in return. Like maybe I'll go to this mission, or I'll say extra Hail Marys. Well, Chimuelita says, if you help me with this, I'll give you a tooth. And it just got a mayonnaise jar full of teeth. Yeah. And she doesn't pop them out. It's just when wonderful things happen after she's made a promesa, her tooth just falls out. It's a miracle. There's miracles everywhere, And at the time I was writing the book, in San Antonio, there was this statue. This was in the 90s. I don't remember what year. But there was a statue of the Virgen that was crying. And so people had come from all over the place to go see this miracle. And my characters go too. And then later they found out, the science comes in. And the science says, well, the wood had absorbed some moisture, and with the humidity or something, it was the moisture that had been absorbed. It wasn't a miracle, okay? And so this is kind of the struggle that Sophia's had. Are there miracles? And then what is it in us that so desires there to be? And she kind of doubts all that, But one of Sophia's heroes is Percival Lowell. Percival Lowell, he's credited for discovering Pluto, but he's also credited for another little tidbit. He believed that he saw canals on Mars, and he spent hours, looking at Mars and mapping these canals, and he thought there was a civilization there, and she's fascinated by that because here's someone who believes in something. And I think that's what she was searching for, that type of that type of faith in something. And she didn't think she had it, but she realizes she does. And it's through her art. It's where her faith and where her miracles happen. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of what I was dealing with Sophia. It's a good question. No, I made it up. But what I didn't make up, was also when I started writing this book, Selena had died, and in Corpus, a lot of the walls of restaurants and stores, they had murals of La Virgen, and after Selena died, a lot of these became murals of Selena. She's from Corpus, so the town was really mourning, and that I thought that was strange, and I thought that it was a nice symbol for the way that we blur commercialism with things that are holy, and how we commercialize what we think of as holy and sacred. And, so I was kind of playing around with that too. And I thought that restaurant, which is a made-up restaurant, but just that idea of changing the mural from the Virgen to Selena, I was kind of just doing what I saw people around the city doing in that sense. Any other questions? Yes. My website is DianaLopezBooks.com. So, and I have some cards outside. You can pick up the card, and it has my website on there. Mm-hmm. You just have to read the book. You'll just have to read the book. Oh, okay.
So let's thank Professor Lopez for